Bigpod, I heard that you were blowing up your home lab.
Yeah, I am.
Welcome to the life of the distro hacker.
Well, not exactly. I just need to replace it because it's broken, and that's it.
Alright, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit after the news. Hey guys, welcome to No Tux Allowed. I am your host Josh, and today I'm wearing this beautiful white t-shirt that you know me for wearing all the time. And I have managed to bring my host Bigpod with me on time today.
Yes, on time.
Yes, which thankfully he's on time more often than I am. But hey, you know what? This is a first for me. All right, at least the first time that I'm noting it. So, Bigpod, I heard that you were having some issues with your home lab. So, your solution is to nuke and pave.
Yeah, always been the solution for
all
many problems.
Yes, been the solution for many problems. We don't fix things anymore. We just nuke and pave because for some reason that just seems to work more reliably in our experiences.
Yeah, and
so
it's faster to do.
Yeah, so I know you've been a Proxmox enjoyer, and Proxmox is like the home lab metagame choice.
Yeah.
So, what's going on with it?
Well, booting is somewhat unreliable sometimes, and just in general, getting it to properly boot sometimes is kind of a problem.
Oh, so is it just like pulling in an update and then like not properly updating like the boot manager or anything like
No,
that? Or...
no, not even an update, just out of the random.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And this is just on like a cold boot or like a reboot?
Mostly on reboots.
Okay. Okay. Now, for the record, you're using Proxmox with like their free servers, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just for the context of the record for the listeners, when I first heard this, the very first thing that I mentioned to Bigpod was you are enabling the Proxmox testing servers. So basically, the testing branch for like their operating system. So this is what you literally signed up for when you installed Proxmox, and probably what most people sign up for when they install Proxmox.
Yeah.
So,
but let's be clear, I haven't updated in quite some time, but that shouldn't matter. It's literally older the installation gets, more unstable it is.
that sounds a lot like Microsoft Windows.
Well, no, because Windows doesn't really get more unstable. Windows gets more bloated. This just gets unstable.
That's true.
This is
Okay.
It's same speed when it actually boots and when it actually works. Problem is it doesn't work all the time. Where Windows gets slower, but will still work.
Oh, that's awkward. So, it sounds like that it might be an issue relating to Proxmox. So you're probably going to be trying a different solution.
Yep.
Now, I know you're not a fan of just installing any Linux distro like I am and just making it a server because you could just do that with any Linux distro.
Wait, but what will I control it with?
I mean, I just do everything over SSH.
I don't want to do that.
Oh, okay. So what is your proposed solution to this so far?
XCPNG.
Isn't that like the thing that like Lawrence Tech tends to use a lot for like virtualization?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What the heck is it, first of all?
Well, it's basically an open source, high performance version of what used to be a Zen hypervisor. Basically, it's a successor and open source version of Citrix Zen server from way back in the day. It's by default Zen is actually more secure than KVM.
Okay. Well, is it more secure because less people use it?
No, more
Oh,
secure because even the host is technically, or the what you interact with when you plug in a keyboard and monitor is technically a VM, or as close to a VM as possible. There is it is closer to how Windows does things when you enable Hyper-V than how Linux with KVM does it. If that
oh,
makes sense.
okay, okay. So, looking at like XCPNG, just going to like xcpng.org, the very first thing I noticed is that it's a very straightforward website compared to like other hypervisors where there's a download button right here in the middle of my web browser. So that's
Yeah.
great. Uh, Scrolling down, it looks like that's got a nice, fairly simplistic control dashboard of some kind. I don't know if this is software or browser.
It's
It
browser.
it it says that's a modern web UI, so hey, that's pretty cool. And it looks like that they're advertising a feature that I wish that I could figure out on KVM: live migration of VMs without interruption.
Yeah. KVM
Now,
really isn't made for that.
no, KVM is not really made for that, but it is potentially doable if you're willing to take the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Remember, the XCPNG more targets what used to be the space, or what is the space of ESXi, more than anything else. The VMware world of enterprise virtual machines.
I mean, they actively at, have it down here towards the bottom, that down by like their install page. They literally have a button that says migrate from VMware. So
Yeah.
they tell you how you can just migrate from VMware to that with just a few clicks. Now, I have tried XCPNG before, but this was like years ago that I tried this. So maybe it's worth like a check for me again. When I'm actually willing to blow up like my current home lab solution, which has been working fairly flawlessly so far. Besides like a few headaches I had with Docker. So, uh, maybe that's something that I might check out as well. Though I think I need to set up like a separate dedicated system to install this on. Which
Yeah.
right now all I have is just a Pinebook, so it probably doesn't work on ARM. I
Probably
mean,
not.
probably not.
I don't see an install for ARM.
Yeah, so I'll have to figure that out. So in the meantime, we do have a little bit of news to talk about. There really wasn't a whole lot of news that I actually wanted to talk about today. But Wikipedia, or well, the Wikimedia group, came out with an interesting post here talking about how they're wanting to integrate AI into Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not a resident of the internet and you don't know what Wikipedia is,
Well, I actually was back in the day of me being 16 or something like that, was thinking of going into the area of AI more closely than I at the end went to. Because, well, honestly, AI is and was a very interesting area, but at the end of the day, I saw that it's going down the wrong path, and I still think it's going down the wrong path. Well, what can we do? But I do think this, comparably to what we use AI today for, is actually a lot better use case for it than a basically, how to say this to be nice, a statistical model that all it does is places words one after another based on a math question of, does this word seem right based on what was said before, or does this token, which means in reality just a number. That's what really is AI. And another day, AI, once you actually do something with it, that stops being AI. It becomes something a lot less fancy, like large language model, like spell check, like computer vision. Because AI is really just a catch-all term we should stop using for large language models.
Okay, so in this case here, like what they're saying is that they're looking to just use AI for like quality control. Now, there have been fascinating reports of like AI's work in like helping out healthcare providers, where AI examines X-rays and points out issues that human eyes might just not see. So, and in the context of like somebody's personal health, I find value in that.
Yeah, but
Now,
remember, those are different kinds of AI than what we nowadays call AI, aka the large language models.
that is true. That is true. Like, obviously there are different kinds of AIs, and a lot of AIs nowadays are just like glorified rebadged algorithms, as we called them in the past. Like, spell check.
Yeah.
Since when is the F7 shortcut on your keyboard AI?
Technically, it might be.
It could be under new definitions, but under previous definitions, that wasn't AI.
Well, again, as I said, AI is more a fancy term for a product, a fancy term of what product was before it became a product. It could have it could actually be AI as actual AI. Problem is that as soon as it actually gets a use, becomes productized, it gets a much more boring name, like spell check.
Yep, that is true. That said, I have been reading a lot of Warhammer lore lately, and they really don't like AI. As soon as you say AI, they just blow up an entire world because that's just what Warhammer does. So let's not discuss it. Let's not continue this discussion any longer than we have to. Instead, let's talk about KDE. Now, KDE is an organization that writes the Plasma desktop, or well, maintains the Plasma desktop under Linux. And yes, the desktop used to be called KDE, but the desktop is called Plasma now, and
Yes.
KDE is the name of the company behind it.
Yes.
It matters. So KDE had their yearly annual sprint for the
Okay.
first time in 3 years, of course, because COVID-19, and then like a scheduling conflict with last year's. So, a couple things came up. First of all, Bigpod, did you know that KDE Plasma had an LTS release?
No, I actually didn't know that.
Oh, well, it turns out that this is something that I knew about for a while because I would pay attention to Ubuntu release notes, and Kubuntu on their LTS releases always said that this is the latest Plasma stable LTS release. So
Ah, okay.
I've known that they've done this for a little while, but they discussed this, and they're not really liking the idea of maintaining an LTS version of Plasma anymore. Not necessarily because anything financial, but just because Plasma developers just don't like working on old crap.
Makes sense. Who does?
That is true. So, and obviously, they're saying that the long term support product hasn't always been that great. Like, they're getting constant user complaints about like Kubuntu LTS versions, complaining about how like their KDE doesn't have the latest greatest feature that was advertised to them and so on. So they're looking at just axing the idea of an LTS entirely, which I can get behind, because to be fair, KDE needs to like solidify on like what their product offerings a little bit here. Sometimes seems like it's a little bit too wide. So the less that they have to maintain, probably the better for them. But they're looking at axing the LTS release and maintaining each Plasma version, quote unquote, a little bit longer.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
they're adding an extra bug fix release. So the point releases. So like I think right now we're on Plasma 6.3.4 or whatever. That third point number is typically like a bug fix release.
Hmm.
That's what they're talking about. So they're going to introduce more of those, and they're going to change from 3 to just 2 Plasma feature releases per year. So rather than a 4-month development cycle, a 6-month development cycle. So they'll be releasing twice, generally around the
Okay.
same time that Fedora and Kubuntu would release.
Yeah.
Since
Makes
those are
sense.
the two most common distros for KDE, which I think that's probably a good idea, because those are two distros that realistically, like in the terms of like Linux desktop usage, those are two distros that basically matter. Because Kubuntu is a pretty big deal for KDE. That's probably where the majority of the users actually are, because the Kubuntu developers are the guys that maintain the KDE desktop on Ubuntu, and
Yeah.
every distro that is forked off of Ubuntu is using the Kubuntu KDE stack, more or less. Uh, Not Neon though. Neon's its own different beast, and nobody should actually be technically using it for the desktop OS. They say so, but and then Fedora. Fedora is like the distro that pushes to be like the developer distro, because they're working upstream with everybody for the most part. And honestly, I I think like the majority of the KDE developers actually develop using Fedora, at least from what I've seen. I know that if quite a few of the big name KDE users like Neil Gampa, Nate Graham, and like a couple others all use basically Fedora for KDE. So that makes sense. And then what other distros really offer KDE? I guess you can
Um.
install KDE on Arch Linux, but
Yeah. Manjaro.
yeah, but how often does Manjaro actually contribute upstream?
Probably not that often.
Yeah, at least I haven't seen it, lately. I know that they have in the past, but not super commonly. Mostly though, like the Manjaro development is more like, at least these days, from what I've seen, is geared more towards like the ARM development, that rather than just general KDE development in general. And let's see here. Then we got OpenSUSE, which still doesn't know what a default desktop environment is. Even though they default to GNOME or KDE, depending on which version of OpenSUSE you have the ISO for. And then you got, I think the only independent distros that really push KDE is like OpenMandriva and KOS.
Hmm.
Neither of which are particularly huge, although OpenMandriva is a pretty cool distro.
Yeah.
And then They also discussed like the theming on KDE, specifically like the themes that you get from like the KDE store. So like the community drive themes. There was a big story like last year when a third-party global theme caused like a user's home directory to get blown up, and
Yeah.
it's been a topic of discussion in like KDE development for a while since then. So they've come down to the conclusion that KDE uses QML code for handling like the theming, and they determined that there's not really a way to make it safe. So they're probably gonna be moving away from it.
Yeah.
So the, they don't know what they're changing to yet, but they're they're probably going to be like moving away from QML. So keep an eye on there and see, and we'll at least try to keep an eye on that and see what they come up with, because it could be something worthwhile to talk. And then they're talking about there was a little bit of chat about like the activities feature in KDE, which some people confuse with like KDE activities with desktop workspaces. They're really kind of different. Now, Bigpod, on like Android phones, you have like these different profiles you can load for Android.
No.
Same thing with like iPhone.
No.
Oh, well, that's kind of like what activities is. It's like a sort of a separate like user session, just like virtualized. So like you could have like a Firefox in one activity and a separate Firefox in another activity, and they're pseudo containerized from each other. So like they're like independent processes and everything.
Hmm.
It's a really fascinating feature, and it's difficult to really explain like the use for it in an elevator pitch, which I can kind of agree with. So they're talking about like making some changes to the way activities work. So they're talking about setting up something for example, like a home activity where you could have an email client set up, and when you're in that home activity, it will only show like your personal emails, and then you'll have like a separate work activity where that same email client will only ever show you things for work. Which that's a cool solution, but when it comes to this, I'm not too sure that this is going to be something that I will personally ever have a use for. But at least at least somebody over there thinks that's a good idea, so they're going to continue working on that a little bit more. And then they got to talking about the telemetry feature of KDE. Now, Bigpod, I
What?
know you and I are probably going to have quite a talk here on telemetry.
Yeah.
There's going to be somebody out there in the comments that's probably going to say that all telemetry is bad; it should never exist to begin with. And I'm going to talk about a little bit like how the KDE telemetry works and how it's actually not that bad. So I just wanted to put that in clarification first for like you and the audience.
Okay.
Now, when you do a fresh installation of KDE Plasma and you boot into the user session for the first time, it's going to pop. It's going to pull up like this little welcome window that you click next on a whole bunch because honestly, you just don't really care about half the features. But the very last slide of it is a simplistic slider with a next button. That slider from the left to the right depends on is literally just like a control slider for how much telemetry you send back to the KDE project, not the distro, the KDE developers.
Hmm.
So, what and the idea of this is that this data is used for like making KDE better. Like they're like I would assume that would talk about like what settings you're using in KDE and what settings you're not using, what settings you are using. Your system languages, like for like translation purposes, like the languages that you have set up on not only the graphical session but your keyboard layouts, because that stuff kind of matters for like a user interface. And
Yeah.
it turns out that they say that right here, if you have like a Kwin effect, so like wobbly windows turned on in Kwin, they actually don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So uh they want to see like how far they can go with the telemetry, and like can they get this data and still like try to keep it somewhat private. And they're talking about like the Steam hardware survey as like the gold standard, which I don't know about you, Bigpod, but it's been a hot minute since like I've actually looked at like Steam hardware since I've gotten the prompt for the Steam hardware survey. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of data inside it,
Yeah.
which that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, this is opt-in telemetry, which Bigpod, I personally think that is a little worth less than opt-out telemetry.
It's worth nothing.
Yeah, effectively. So, uh, I'm not a developer in these things, but I'm sure that you've worked on a project that where you've gotten some telemetry data to work with in the past. At
Yeah.
least I think you probably have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about like the actual benefits that this telemetry actually would give you?
So, uh, while to me the telemetry didn't really help a lot because I was working on the back end, but especially to front end people, telemetry really helps out because if nothing else, it tells them that the UI that you're facing is actually like either confusing or hard to understand or in general just like hard to use. They see that by how users use the UI, what features of it they use, if it's simplistic usage, so then they can like front that simplistic usage and make it easier to get to that usage than if let's say they're getting to the things that are like hidden behind menus like consistently, then you should probably front those things. Now, what can help in terms of like something like a desktop environment? If you know that certain settings are being enabled all the time, why not make them default? If you know that users tend to not care about this whole tab of settings, maybe make it smaller, lower it, or incorporate it somewhere else where they might actually open it. And those are just basic examples. If you go a bit deeper, let's say for a distro, let's say for example nobody opens up a text editor and always installs their own. Why include a text editor with a distro?
That's actually a good point. Now, I know that KDE for the longest time, if you downloaded like the KDE tarball and installed it yourself, like the super manual way that you probably never have done before, it would enable single click windows for like the file manager. So
Yeah,
if you just do a single click on a folder, it would just open. If you do a single click of like any readable file type, it'll just open in the appropriate application to read it.
yeah,
A lot of people turn that off.
yeah. I remember that even some distros left that as a default, which I never understood.
Yeah. Now, of course, I know that there's like a couple of people that are just like single click is just superior, and I don't disagree with them because at the end of the day, it's your workflow. If you're used to it, you're just gonna be more
Yeah,
efficient doing that. So, yeah, you can fight about that in the comments on the YouTube video because we need more engagement on YouTube. But hey, uh, I'm certain that you can find some value in KDE there. Now, of course, it's time for us to talk about something super serious, Big Pod.
Yes.
Super serious because Linux now has a new supported device that it can run on, even though it's not really a device. It's Microsoft Excel. So, uh, yeah, I was just randomly searching like ground news, not a sponsor, for like Linux topics, and I saw this in here. It's literally called Linux in Excel. Sure, why not ruin both of them? So this is normally the thing that there's no practical purpose to this, at least not yet. So it's really just like doing this for the sake of doing it, and it's just having fun. So if you're I first of all, for clarity, I am not an Excel expert. My time in Excel is just calculating simple budgets. I'm certain that Bigpod, you're no Excel professional either.
I'm not Excel professional, but I do use it quite a bit these days. Like, if I need to calculate anything, it's very likely I'm gonna just open an Excel spreadsheet in my browser and do the calculation there. Do I need a table? Sure, Excel. Do I need to keep track of something that doesn't deserve to be in a database? Sure, Excel.
Okay, so you've never messed around with VBA macros.
I have.
Oh, you have. Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever looked at the Mini RV32 IMA RISC-V emulator?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, that's what this guy used to get Linux to boot in Excel, or at least appear to. I mean, he could only get the kernel working. He couldn't get anything else working because there's some hardware limitations. So first of all, it's limited. It's the VBA macro is implementing a 16-bit CPU with an amazing 128 kilobytes of RAM and a 128 by 128 display.
Yeah.
And he found it's evidently very buggy. And he didn't want to spend a lot of time, on making it work. But he got the kernel to take some inputs and get it to give some outputs. That was really about it. Which, in terms of like computers, that is a functional computer. But it probably can't play Doom. So, anyways, guys, now that we've had the fun topic out of the way, uh, give us some feedback. Send us an email to like this email address right here. Contact at tuckspace.com. I don't mind getting an email every now and then. Sometimes we get some emails that are pretty interesting. Pretty interesting reads. Like I remember like way early in the podcast we got like this email from like an R developer, which
Yeah.
I've never used R for anything, but he had a lot to talk about because that's when we talked about like fragmentation for a little bit, and that was a fascinating read. So if you want to give us a long thing to read, send us an email. If you guys want to like talk with like our general community, we also have a Discord that I have linked in the description. Unfortunately, it's a standard Discord invite link because I don't feel like paying Discord for a proper link. So you're kind of on your own for that one. So yeah, it's linked in the show notes. So just go down there and get it. As for if you like the show enough that you actually want to give us some money, because we've got some plans for the show. Go to patreon.com/notuxallowed. Drop us a couple dollars on there. Our goal is to get to $9,000 at some point. That way, we could buy a server and, move off the cloud.
Yes, and the plans get higher and higher because remember, those 9,000 won't be enough because there needs to be someone who can rack them. So
That's true. That's true. We
couple
need
of
to pay
thousand
some.
for a plane ticket are also necessary.
Yeah, possible plane tickets, as well as, and then we need to like get like operating costs accounted for because
Yeah.
this is co-located on a server rack and it's not mine, so it's going to cost some money. But hey, you know what? That's cool. But I want to try it. See if we can get away with it. I've even already got the space reserved. I just need to get the equipment. Or you just want to get like a higher like audio quality feed, some access to a pre-show, and sometimes some little tidbits from me and Bigpod through like a special RSS feed. There you go. That's how you get it. Just give us a couple dollars on the Patreon. That said, of course, there's gonna be a lot of links to like our personal content available at tuckspace.com. Our web page's front end. It still works. It hasn't broken yet. Like half my other projects in life. So hey, at least I know how to make a simple clicking link tree clone in like basic HTML and CSS and maybe a little bit of JavaScript here and there. Of course, we've also got our own YouTube channels. You can go to at Bigpod on YouTube, or in my case, at 10LeeJ. And then we've also got like these links right here. These are for our Mastodon instances or our Fediverse profiles. So like your Mastodons, your Pleromas, your Mist keys, your threads. You put these links into your search bar. You'll pull up our profiles. And of course, if you want like a free way to get notifications for that are show released, our wonderful podcast instance does integrate with the Fediverse as well. So, Bigpod, I have a busy day ahead of me. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sign off now and go bash my head up against the wall.
Okay.
I'll see you next week.
Goodbye.